everybody to AWS Migration Hub, how the AWS Migration Hub helps you plan, track, and complete your application migrations to AWS. Today I'm one of three speakers on this webinar. My name is Michael Shosheni. I'm a Senior Product Manager in AWS Migration Services. And I'm joined by Carmen Puccio, who's a Principal Solutions Architect in our partner program, and Diego Dalmalin, who's a Partner Solutions Architect in our AWS partner program. So today's agenda is we're going to cover four main areas. First, we'll talk about how customers approach migration today, and a lot of the questions you're going to ask as you go through your migrations and what tooling we have available to help you with that. We'll talk about how the Migration Hub helps you in four key areas: discovery, EC2 recommendations, data exploration, and how you can track your migrations. Then Carmen will do a demo showing how you can analyze your discovery data for migration planning. And finally, I'll briefly talk about a customer case study of a customer who did many of the things that Carmen will show you in the demo. So we'll get right into it. The top three circles show you the overall migration approach we recommend for customers. And this is based on helping customers move thousands of servers and applications into AWS and the best practices that we've developed and our partners have developed. On the left, you have migration, preparation, and business case. This is the very first activity you'll want to do to be successful migrating to AWS. Once you've built your business case, you'll start your portfolio discovery and planning. And you'll do that to answer a lot of questions I'll talk about in a second. And then finally, you'll design each application and then execute the migration and validate it once it's in AWS. And there's many different ways you can migrate an app, often called the 7 R's of migration. And we'll talk about how what questions you need to answer in order to be able to do that app migration and validation. And so throughout these three main activities, you'll face a lot of questions. Many of them are here on the screen. And if you're unprepared to answer these questions, your migration project can have issues and delays. But we found that customers who use tooling to help answer these questions move much more quickly and don't experience those delays. So in that first phase on the left, during migration preparation and business case and your overall migration planning, you're going to ask questions like, what are my on-premise costs? What are my migration costs? How do I pick EC2 instances once I'm on AWS? How do I right-size them? And then, of course, the big question are, what are my costs once I'm on AWS? So you can see and compare that to your on-premise costs and make that decision to migrate and see what kind of cost savings you're going to have and other savings you'll realize. So once you've answered those questions, you're going to move to the discovery and planning phase. And so usually many of our customers in this phase will realize that, or they already know that their CMDB is out of date. And they'll want to understand the actual utilization of their servers and applications and what servers are running, what apps are running on each server. And perhaps even more importantly, what are the application's network dependencies? What apps does this app depend on? It plays a key role in helping you build your migration plan and determine when to move particular applications and how important a particular app may be based on the dependencies it has. And so even if you have detailed discovery data, whether it be from a tool or other systems that you already have on premise, we found that those discovery tools, they generate a lot of data. And so existing tools can take time to analyze that data. And so when you're analyzing that data, you're going to be trying to answer questions like, what apps should I migrate, when and what order? That's your migration plan. And then, of course, when you get to the app design phase, you want to answer the question of how do I migrate this app? Am I going to rehost it or replatform it in AWS and move it in a lift and shift manner, or am I going to do a more in-depth re-architecture and have it start taking advantage of AWS cloud services as I move it? And so once you start migrating those applications, once you've kind of figured out how you're going to move a particular set of apps and their dependencies, we've heard from customers that there tends to be a lack of visibility into the app migrations. And so because you're using different tools to migrate different applications and you're doing it in different ways, it can be difficult to track all those migrations across all of those tools, and in some cases even, whether it be just custom scripts. And so customers tend to ask, well, how do I keep track of all my migrations without slowing down progress and velocity? And so we have AWS migration tools that help you with all of these challenges, and that's what we're gonna talk about. One particular one that brings a lot of them together today and helps you across all three of these phases, and that's the Migration Hub. So the AWS Migration Hub is designed to be a single location to track the progress of application migrations across both AWS and partner solutions. With the Migration Hub, you can discover your on-premise portfolio using the Application Discovery Service, or you can import discovery data from existing data sources like your own CMDB or another discovery tool that you might use. Once imported or discovered, you can view this information and group servers into applications to help you plan your migration. And you can track the progress of your migrations using the migration tools that best fit your needs, because the Hub integrates with both AWS migration tools and partner tools. Now, for the discovery and analyzing that data, that's what Carmen's going to show you later in the webinar, in the demo. You'll see some ways in which you can analyze that data and group your applications and build your migration plan with that data. Migration Hub is available in any it can help you track your migrations into any AWS region, as long as your tool supports migrating into that region. The Hub itself is located in US West Oregon, so your migration status information and your discovery data would be stored in US West Oregon, but you can migrate into any AWS region. And then the Hub and its services are available at no cost, no additional charge to AWS customers. So you only pay for the cost of the migration tools you use, and ultimately any resources that you consume on AWS. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the discovery service that's integrated with the Migration Hub, and the overall workflow that you're going to see highlighted, how you analyze the data in the demo. So the application discovery service is a discovery tool that captures the details of your on-premise infrastructure, including server details like OS name, IP address, MAC address, and time series utilization data like CPU utilization, memory utilization, and IOPS. It also captures the network connections and process information of the servers that you install the agent on. So agent-based collection, the top one highlighted there on the left, is able to collect the most information. And then once captured and stored in the application discovery service, you can use this data for the activities on the right. So you can do things like estimate your EC2 costs directly from the Migration Hub, or analyze the data in the Hub and analyze dependency information using Athena and QuickSight, and get summary information in QuickSight. Now, as you collect the data, there's three ways to do it, as I mentioned. So the first highlighted here is agent-based discovery. The agentless discovery connector is designed for collecting on VMware environments. And you deploy it by deploying an OVA on a VMware host. And you're able to collect information about each VM. Agentless discovery is OS agnostic, and it's able to read data for any VM, irrespective of the OS that's running on your VMware host. It collects less information than agent-based. It's not able to collect the process and network information, but it does collect that time series utilization data for each server, along with server specifications. Finally, the discovery service supports importing from existing data sources. So you're able to import data that you might already have. Often customers have a CMDB, which is a good starting point early on in their migrations, or they're using ServiceNow. Or alternatively, some customers use a different discovery tool, but want to leverage that discovery data later on for migration planning and execution. And so you can export that data from a partner discovery tool such as Risk Networks and import it into the into Application Discovery Service in the Migration Hub. Once you've done one of these three use one of these three tools to capture your data, all that data is visible in the Migration Hub console, as well as via our API or various ways to export it. And as you get ready to do different migration planning activities like estimating EC2 costs, you can right-size your compute resources from within the Hub. You can obtain EC2 recommendations, and then incorporate that into your overall total cost of ownership analysis, which you'll use to help plan your migrations and make the business case for migrating to AWS. We also offer a more detailed assessment available to customers, including optimizations for Microsoft licensing and storage costs using TSO logic. And you can reach out to your account team for more information about that. For data collected with agent-based discovery, it can be automatically exported directly to Amazon Athena as it's collected from the agent. And once in Athena, you can query it directly and build your own queries and views of the data, or you can easily visualize it in Amazon QuickSight. And that's what I'll show you in the, later on in the webinar. Using QuickSight provides you the flexibility to analyze the data, to view the network dependencies between servers, and identify processes that are running on a given server. So now I'm going to talk about the end-to-end process. So we dove a little bit in there into the discovery and migration planning and how the discovery service helps you with that. And now I want to give a quick workflow overview of how you could use the hub end-to-end across those three phases we talked about at the beginning. So the initial business case, all the way through migration planning, and then tracking. So to use the hub to both discover your on-premise assets and migrating, you would do the following. First, you would either deploy an AWS Discovery Connector or agents, or both, onto your on-premise servers and collect the necessary information to build a business case and plan your migrations. The discovery data that is collected by the agents and connector are sent to the application discovery service and viewable in the migration hub. Alternatively, you can import data directly into the hub from those other data sources we mentioned, like CMDB tools or another discovery tool. And once you've collected the data about your on-premises servers, you'll be ready to obtain EC2 instance recommendations from the migration hub, which Carmen will talk about in a few slides, and estimate the costs for your TCO analysis. Once you perform that TCO analysis and you're ready to start planning your migrations, you can view and group servers from inside the hub using tags to help sort them and identify what a server might be doing, and then group applications. Or you can do the analysis. You could also do the analysis in Athena and QuickSight if you're using the agent, and then bring back the app grouping into the hub when you're ready. And then once you're ready to start moving those first sets of apps, this is where you'll move into migration tracking. And you'll want to select the migration tools that best fit your needs and connect them to the migration hub. And you do that by authorizing the tool to send status to the hub using an IAM role. You start your migrations using your selected migration tool. And these tools include tools integrated with the hub, which we'll talk about a little more in a few slides, include the server migration service, Cloud Endor, which was recently acquired by AWS and available at no cost, and database migration service and partner tools like Addadata, Adamotion, and River Meadow. And so once you're migrating with those tools, you can track the status for whichever set of tools you're using of that application migration from within the hub. You also can get key metrics from our top-level migration metrics dashboard about the progress of your app migrations and see very clearly if one of the tools is reporting an error, so you can more quickly go in and troubleshoot the issue. Finally, as you complete your app migrations, testing, and cutover, you can do what your ultimate goal was with the migration, which is start decommissioning your application infrastructure in the migrated servers. So with that, I'll hand it off to Carmen to start diving into what he's going to show in the demo.
All right, and thank you, Michael. Quick introduction on myself. My name's Carmen Puccio, Principal Solutions Architect, as Michael introduced earlier in the webinar. But just to give a little bit of context about my role here at AWS, I spent the better part of 2 years working with our mass migrations team, and a lot of the stuff that I learned working with partners and customers as part of that team conveyed over very nicely to my current role in the AWS Partner Container team. We talk about the mental model here at AWS when you're doing mass migrations, and it's paramount when you think about the planning and how you use that information from discovery in the planning phase and using it to feed into a business case. Nobody really wants to do a migration without understanding the total cost of ownership. And when you think about moving to AWS, the key advantage really is elasticity, right? So when you think about the data center world, customers used to over provision to make sure that they had enough capacity to handle business operations at essentially like their peak level of activity. And now they can provision the number of resources they actually need, knowing that they can instantly scale up or down along with the needs of their business, which reduces cost and improves the customer's ability to meet their user demands. So as part of your migration, having a data-driven cost model that maps to a right-size footprint in AWS is going to let you take advantage of that elasticity in a cost-effective manner. In 2019, I think it was May of 2019, the Migration Hub introduced the ability to generate right-size instances for running your on-premises workloads in AWS. So this feature analyzes the data collected from each on-premises server, including things like the server specification, the CPU, memory, and uses that to recommend the least expensive EC2 instance required to run that workload. You have the ability to fine tune those recommendations by specifying things like preferences for your AWS purchasing option or the region you want to run your instances in. Maybe you want to do exclusions on certain instance types. And using things like the CPU RAM utilization metric to basically come up with the right size instance for your workload. So the EC2 instance recommendation feature, it really simplifies the migration process by eliminating the need and the manual effort required to calculate essentially what size instance is right for me. And you can use this to forecast your cost for planning a migration. We talk a lot about how that business case gets built, and we talk about the basically the thumb in the air business case, the refined business case, and the detailed business case as part of our mass migration program. And having the ability to do this inside the hub is a fantastic feature. It gives you the ability to start to build those cases for your teams. In order to get started with the Amazon EC2 instance recommendations, you obviously must have data about your on-premises servers into the hub, right? So Michael talked about the ways that you can populate data in. And this data can come from things like the discovery connector or the discovery agent, the application discovery agent, or from the migration hub import. But once you have this server information in the migration hub, you now have the ability to obtain preferences based on all of these sizing options. So again, you can start looking at things like max utilization and average utilization and percentage of utilization. And again, to kind of sum it up, you can use that information to come to your final pricing model. So super awesome feature. So when we talk about like how you want to analyze the discovery data, Michael mentioned earlier the quick site model, and that's what you're seeing here. And I personally think this is the most powerful one. But again, there's other ways to do it, right? There's multiple different ways to do it, and we're going to talk about each one. But you need to think about that. It's very important to know that the data set into the hub from the application discovery service is detailed data. And it includes time series data for systems performance information, and it has things like inbound and outbound network connections, and it gives you information around the processes running on the server. And you can use this data to understand your network dependencies between servers and groups, and then related servers and applications for your migration planning. After starting the data collection process on the discovery connector or the agent, the collected data for your servers and VMs appear in the hub around 15 minutes after you turn it on. And then once you do that, you now can use one of the various different ways to explore your data. The first way is obviously through the AWS console, which we'll show you in the demo. So you started your data collection process using the agent or the discovery connector. You can now go to the console and view the collected data about your servers or virtual machines. You could also use things like the AWS CLI or make API calls. And you could also do things like exporting the collected data and look at it inside of a CSV template. There are a couple of ways to view and analyze the collected data. And the first way is obviously through the AWS console. After starting the data collection process, either through the discovery connector or through your agent, you can obviously just go right to the console to view your collected data about your servers and virtual machines. And you should start seeing that data appear around 15 minutes or so, as I said before. You could obviously also use the AWS CLI, or you could use API calls to get access to that data. Another way of getting access to that data is by exporting the data from the hub. And so using the console or the CLI, you have the ability to start what's called an export task, which will give you a URL that allows you to download a zip file with the data of the discovered servers in a CSV format, along with a JSON file containing the data about the export task and its results. Lastly, you have the ability to explore the data in Amazon Athena, which gives you the ability to analyze that collected data from all of your discovered on-premises servers and by the discovery agents or the connector, all in one place. And we're going to talk about this workflow a lot more, and we're going to use it in the demo. But it's the most powerful, as I said before, because it allows you to interact with the data in something like QuickSight, and you can leverage essentially continuously exporting the data in regular intervals to visualize the outputs and perform additional analysis. Having the ability to create a dashboard for your migration teams and share that information as you're going through your migration journey is a tremendous feature inside the hub. So once data exploration in Athena is enabled from the Migration Hub console, and the data collection for the agents is turned on, the data collection by the agents will automatically get stored in your S3 bucket at a regular interval. And then you can go visit Amazon Athena to run predefined queries to analyze this time series performance for each server, the type of processes that you're running on. You can visualize the network dependencies. And in addition, again, you can write your own queries, right? You have the ability to obviously upload your own data sources, such as CMDBs, as Michael was talking about before, and you can use that to essentially associate the discovered servers with your actual business applications. So when we talk about how you track your migrations, it's important to realize that a migration will have multiple tools, and it's going to take time to finalize, right? It's something that we talk very prescriptive about in our cloud adoption framework, and we call it the mental model, that you go through the various stages. Having numerous tools in the process is common. And when you think about how you're going to plan and how you're going to track and execute and test and optimize, there's different tools that do different jobs in those various different stages. But the one thing that's necessary is you need to track your migration during those stages, and it would be fantastic to have a single pane of glass. And the AWS Migration Hub provides that single pane of glass for you to discover your existing servers and plan your migrations and track the status of each application regardless of the tool. So Michael mentioned some of the tools that are integrated from the partner side. We obviously also have the AWS Server Migration Service, as you see here, and the AWS Database Migration Service. So you can see the status of your servers and databases that make up your applications you're migrating, regardless of which tool you're using. So using the Migration Hub and combining it with the AWS or partner tools that best fit your needs, well, it's really going to give you that visibility that I was talking about into your overall portfolio of applications as they're moving. So I want to talk a little bit more about the Athena and QuickSight example, and again, we're going to demo it. But as I mentioned before, this is a really powerful feature, and it allows your migration teams to build these complex queries and visualizations around the migration as opposed to crawling through a bunch of spreadsheets. And one of the things that's important to understand about a migration planning effort is you need to analyze not just the utilization and system information about your IT portfolio, but you need to think about all of the application level information. And when I say application level information, what I'm saying is you need to understand the dependencies of what's talking to what. This information, if you think about it, it's invaluable because it's not always a steady stream of traffic. So over time, you may see your application making like outbound requests or handling inbound requests. They're crucial to your users or your applications, but it's not consistent, it's sporadic. And understanding and being able to visualize and capture this data as part of a migration planning exercise, it's tremendously important. So imagine, this kind of scenario where you're moving an application to the cloud, and how are you planning or how are you thinking about creating ingress and egress rules for something like a security group if you don't have this type of information of what's talking to what? It's really hard to do that without having access to that data, and especially having access to that data over a time period. So with the functionality inside the application discovery service and building visuals inside of things like QuickSight using Athena for your teams, you can create essentially a heat map to understand your network dependencies. So thinking about this slide, and it's very much in line with what I was talking about before on how we execute migrations and how we teach our partner migration teams to execute. The first thing that you need to do is you need to validate the data completeness. So whether it be from AWS or from an imported data set, you need to understand that data set as a whole. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to look at your utilization metrics. So right sizing as part of your migration effort should be one of your top priorities. So understanding that utilization and your overall metrics of your on-prem workloads is a very early thing that you're going to work on as part of your migration journey. The next thing you do is you need to understand what's running, right? So what kind of software do I have running? And maybe it's a commercial off-the-shelf application. Maybe you need to go look at your licensing agreement before you move, because again, it's not just a push a button and go. There's a lot of planning that happens here. And maybe at the same time, you're not doing a lift and shift to the cloud. You may be wanting to understand the processes that are running on the server, because maybe you're going to start trying to figure out how I can decouple that application as part of a refactor or a replatform effort. The interdependencies is next, and to be honest with you, it's throughout the migration journey. But you don't want to have any surprises here. And again, having something that's factual that allows you to make that data-driven decision when you're building your network policies and you're building your security groups, it's really, really important. Grouping servers into an application, this is something that I try and stress all the time. It's the sum of all parts. It's essentially not just a server by server. And when you go into the hub, and we will demo this, you have the ability to what's called group a server as an application. Because if you think about it, maybe it's just your traditional 3-tier application. There's a web server and it's talking to a backend, and there's a database as well. When you move those things and when you test those things, you want to do it as a whole unit, right? So again, like I say, it's the sum of all parts. You should treat that application or those group of servers as a logical grouping, and plan to migrate them as such, and plan to test them as that grouping. Lastly, you want to think about the migrate and tracking of the application. So regardless of the tool, you want that single pane of glass that I was talking about before to visualize the status of the migration as a whole, so you can report that back to your teams. So as part of the demo, we're going to show you how to do the data export and visualization into Athena and QuickSight. But I wanted you to understand the overall process of how using these services can help you achieve success in your migration. So before you can actually see and start exploring your discovered data in Amazon Athena, data exploration in Amazon Athena must be first enabled by continuous export implicitly being turned on when you choose start data collection or toggle data exploration in Amazon Athena on the data collectors page of the hub console. Data exploration in Amazon Athena can also be enabled by continuous export explicitly being turned on through an API call from the CLI. And once you do this, you can then go explore the data in Amazon Athena. There's going to be a default database called the Application Discovery Service Database, which will be created with the tables you see here, which allows you to query for all these various different metrics and data. But I just wanted to give a visualization of all of the different things that you can take a look at once you turn this on. So before we get into the demo, I'm going to show you a really simple query that you can run in order to get information about your discovered servers. So in this example, we're simply just counting hosts to understand the different operating systems we have in our environment. So you can see here, we're just selecting, doing a distinct count on host name, right? And what you get back is essentially these results. But it'd be way better if you could build this obviously into a dashboard, right? So this is where Athena comes into play. So here's an example of a sample widget coming from Athena. And again, this is amazing because this allows your teams to build all sorts of useful dashboards around their migration planning efforts. And it can be unique to them. So whatever they feel is important. So if you go into the application discovery service user guide, there is a section called Working with Data Exploration in Amazon Athena that allows you to copy and run some pre-created queries that you might want to start creating dashboards around, or at least get yourself familiar with interacting with the service. You'll be able to find those queries around inbound and outbound communications between servers based on port number there, as I was talking before about those interdependencies. So super powerful feature. And again, this is a simplistic example, but we'll show you more in a demo, which is up next. Okay, I need. So the first thing in order to kind of get started in terms of the visualization and the demo, obviously you're going to log into the migration hub. And what you're seeing here is you're presented with a couple of different options. You can discover, you can get your recommendations, or you can migrate, right? So we have quite a bit of documentation that you can follow. And the one thing that we're going to obviously hone in on here is we want to get started with discovery. Right. So again, you want to import your data, you use the AWS discovery tools, and you have a bunch of different options here, right? So you can start with the import template, as I was talking about before. You have the ability to do it inside of VMware, or you could use the agent for Windows or Linux. And a lot of times people ask, well, how do these options differ? And we have a nice little table here for you to follow, so you can see the differences between, what can you do versus what can't you do. So we're going to focus on the agent installation, and we'll get started with that. So the first thing that you need to do when it comes to the agent installation is you need an IAM user. I think Michael mentioned earlier on in the webinar, there's an IAM credential essentially for your on-premises servers to talk back to the hub. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go in and we're going to create a simple user called application discovery agent, and we're going to enable this user for programmatic access, and we're going to attach a managed policy. So there's a managed policy called AWS Application Discovery Agent, and we're just going to click review, create user. And it's important to, at this point, you would note your access key and your secret key because you're going to use that as part of the installation process. So what you're seeing here is a Windows server because we're going to do it for both Windows and Linux. So it's as simple as just going and downloading the MSI. As you can see here, the agent installer MSI is now downloaded. And then we're just going to open up PowerShell. And we're going to change to the downloads directory, and we're just going to run the installer with the region, and then obviously the key and the secret that we got when we created the user. It's literally that simple. And if you think about like doing this at scale, it'd be very easy to do something like this inside of a configuration management tool if you have one inside of your infrastructure. But either way, the agent is now up and running, and let's just switch over and we're going to go take a look at how to do it on Linux. It's actually the exact same process, right? You're going to this time you're just going to curl and you're going to grab the agent installation package. And then what happens is you have a install script, and similar to when you did it on Windows, you run the MSI. Here you're just going to run the install script, and you're going to pass the region, and you're going to pass the keys that we talked about before, and off and running. And then if you do a systemctl, you should be able to see that the application discovery service is up and running. And there it is. So the next thing we're going to do, now that we have our agents registered, right, we're going to go back to the discovery service. We're going to go back into the hub. And what we'll see here is, as soon as it comes up, we should see our servers. And it's going to show any second here. So you go over into the Discover tab, and you have data collectors, which are data connectors, which we don't have because that's the VM portion, but here are our agents, right? And you'll notice they're stopped. You're going to start the data collection. It's only registered to this point. You're going to start it, and also at the same time, you can turn on the Amazon Athena feature that we were talking about before. You can see it over there in the top right corner. That's starting. So now talking about, you know, the data coming into the hub at the same time too, it's going to stream into that S3 bucket for you. And at that point, then you have the ability to start working with Athena. Again, it takes a little bit of time for the discovered data to show up, but you know, it's a great way to get started. So if we come back to the hub and we think about the servers, right, here are the servers that we were talking about before. You can visualize this data right here. Right, so there's a lot of useful information, and it's a great place. It's a one-stop shop to see things like CPU usage and memory usage, and just understand as a whole, you know, what's running on top of my server, or what is my server consuming. But at the same time too, when I was talking about that grouping of an application, it's important to basically build your application groupings that are unique to you. So in this case, we're basically saying that the web servers are part of the overall WordPress application, right? Because web servers and database servers usually go hand in hand. So we're going to group them together as such. You can see here, we're taking the database server, we're going to add it to the existing WordPress grouping. So later when we're thinking about our migration, we can track them as a group, right? Very, very important. You can see now there's 2 servers inside this grouping. So at this point now, we're going to say, okay, you know what, this migration is in progress. We're ready to start thinking about it, and we're going to start tracking it. And essentially, you know, maybe at this point we've moved it over using a tool. You have the ability to obviously change it as well. So again, we're just demoing that functionality, and you can do the same thing here with this commerce application. So super simple to get started. But if you think about your portfolio of applications, you're going to have a lot of servers here. So you're going to work with your teams to figure out what your overall, you know, grouping should be. But once you've done that, you can now then come to this dashboard, and you can track your applications as a whole via the dashboard. You can see your migrated servers over time, which is super important. So if we come back to the hub again, I just want to show you a little bit more around, you know, the dashboard, and then we going into the EC2 instance recommendations that we talked about before. Right. So again, you have the ability to go in, you have the ability to select, and in this case, we'll say, okay, it's the percentile of utilization or average utilization as essentially the starting point or the criteria. You have the ability to look at your tenancy model. You have the ability to look at, you know, do I want to use reserved instances versus on demand? And you can see there, I clicked export, and now the export is completed. And what you get is that CSV file that I was talking about before. So the CSV file, here it is. Super simple. You only see the 4 servers, or the 4 that we were demoing before inside the hub, and it's all of the same information. But what's really cool about this is now you have these recommendations, right? So the very first thing you'll notice here is this recommendation around the instance model. So based off the utilization that the hub, you know, saw as part of your discovered servers, it feels that you should be able to get away with this instance type as part of your migration. And if you want to do an upfront cost model, this would be your cost model. So super powerful for your migration teams to be able to have that capability in their hands. So we're going to go back into the hub again, and in this portion, and just wait for it to come up. We're going to go back into the agents, and we're going to just query Athena. So that's essentially showing you the linkage. You could obviously go right to Athena directly, but you can just navigate right out of the hub console. And here's that pre-created database that I was talking about before. Right. So once you turn this on, all of that data and all of those metrics, they're now basically built into Athena, and you have these tables, right? So again, you remember I was querying against the OS info, trying to understand, you know, how many Windows OSs do I have inside of my enterprise versus Linux, right? You can now use these tables to understand that information. And you can see here, I'm just kind of previewing each one to show you that you have this data, and you can start to kind of build your own complex queries if you want to. So what you're seeing here is, and I wanted to come back to this is essentially the pre-created queries that we were talking about before. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to run each one of these queries, and they're going to create a view for you, right? So they're great examples for you to get started. So now that you have those tables in there, now that you've kind of started to look at your data set, here's some great getting started ones. So here's a good one right here, where you're identifying servers with or without agents. So this is really helping you perform data validation. So think about if you've deployed agents to a number of servers in your network, you can use this query to understand if there are other servers in your network without agents deployed on them. So it's looking at the inbound and outbound traffic, and it's filtering for private IP address space. Super powerful, right? So you can understand, like, again, like what's talking to what. There's also two queries in there as well that do strict, tracking of outbound communication between servers based off port number. And at the same time, too, there's another one for tracking based off of inbound communication based off port numbers as well. So you can see here, we're just creating a view for this one, and this is the system performance one. And now we're on the outbound one that I was talking about before. Now we have the view for outbound, and now we'll go and do the exact same thing for the inbound one. So at this point now, you have all of your views, you have your tables, the data is being fed into Amazon S3, and you have the ability to query it from Athena. You can now go and start building your visuals inside of QuickSight, right? So QuickSight has a very nice integration with Athena. So what we'll do here is we'll create a data source, and we're just going to call it Athena ADS. And you can see here we're validating, and now it's connecting. And now it's going to say, okay, well, what table do you want to target, right? So we're going to target the application discovery service database that I was talking about before. And now let's just kind of like click one of these, one of the demos here, and you can see we're going to be able to visualize. And what we'll do here is we'll kind of walk you through actually building this graph. So it's importing the data, and you can see here we have a bunch of data that we can work with. And now we're going to say, okay, well, let's figure out how many agents are actually running. And it's as simple as basically this, right? So you now have a count of your agents that are running versus aren't running, which is important because it needs to be up and running in order to get that latest and greatest. Because again, your migration tracking should be over time. So you always want those agents running. Right, here's a couple of more queries. So again, here's the operating system one that I was talking about before. And what you're seeing here, I think this is a good example of a dashboard that your teams could build, right? So maybe at the top level, you're showing your overall visualizations of your OSs. And then next, maybe you want to understand by application, let me understand the max memory versus max CPU percentage, and start to look at that at the application level, right? And then maybe you want to understand, again, maybe I want to see the sum of the network, right? So if you look a little bit further down there, you can see the sum of network writes versus the sum of network reads by host name. Again, just because you really need to figure out when you're planning your overall migration, you need to think about what your pipe size is going to be. You need to think about the instance types, and is this instance type capable of handling this network throughput, right? So it's very important. And the same thing for disks, right? So when you're provisioning your EBS volumes, trying to understand what your IOPS are going to be is super important. So again, this is just a very simple dashboard that your migrations teams could use, but it hopefully gives you a good understanding of what you can build and how powerful this feature actually is. So with that said, that's the demo. I do want to pass it over to Michael. I know Mike wants to talk a little bit about the customer case study. So Michael.
Thank you, Carmen. We're now going to do a very quick overview of a customer case study. In this case, it's Hannover Reinsurance. So Hannover Re is just over 50 years old, and it has a gross premium of about 18 billion euros. Currently, it's the fourth largest reinsurer in the world. And in 2017, it had a net income of 960 million euros. They have a network of 140 offices, and they employ about 3,300 people worldwide. So this is a big enterprise, and they used and did many of the used Migration Hub and did many of the activities that Carmen showed. Due to the very nature of the reinsurance business, information technology has become a crucial competitive factor, and it's essential to support Hanover's economic growth targets and to maintain their position as a preferred business partner. This is reflected in their strategy papers, but to put this into context, I'm going to share with you some info about their migrations. So we talked previously about the two ways to do automated discovery with the application discovery service, either use an agent or connector. And Hanover, they looked at their network of offices, and they each have an IT footprint. And so agentless discovery at first appeared to be the easiest option, but they ended up deploying agent-based discovery for two reasons. First, for Hanover, the deployment agents was a simple task. Their infrastructure is highly standardized and centrally managed, so they can deploy software to all their Windows and Linux servers pretty much with the push of a button. And that's exactly what they did. They deployed it globally to many of the places you see here. But they wanted, that second reason was they wanted to get a complete picture of the data they had, and there was more than what the agent could deliver. And they wanted the dependency info an agent could deliver alongside that. So they used the discovery service to get that real-time net performance information and network dependencies off of their servers, and they use ServiceNow as their CMDB, and so they obtained several sets of data directly from ServiceNow. As you can see there on the left, it was one of the data sources, and that included things like the application owner, the number of users for each app, and the agreed SLAs. They got DNS information and port number tables from it, and they also got information about appliances that simply couldn't be discovered by the agent. And so they brought all this data together inside of Amazon Athena. So they turned on data exploration in Athena on the Migration Hub, and then as they installed agents, all that data was streamed directly to S3 and Athena. And they combined it in Athena with the detailed data that was collected by the Discovery Service. And they built multiple visualizations, some of which you saw Carmen demo, and kind of highlighted here on the right, based on that data. And so those visualizations included things like they identified running software by process name and port. They analyzed server interdependencies by network connections. They validated data completeness by checking what servers did and did not have an agent, which Carmen showed. They analyzed operating costs in AWS by doing some instance right sizing, which we now make even easier with EC2 recommendations inside the hub. They used QuickSight to help them group and prioritize workloads based on complexity and the servers that made them up. And finally, they used it to help plan their migration waves. That's that one in the lower right corner there. And doing this, Hanover was able to bring all their data together, get the detailed performance and dependency information that they lacked using the application discovery service, and then use QuickSight to have one dashboard to build their migration plan. And it greatly accelerated their migrations to AWS and made it easier. And so with that, I want to leave you with three resources: the discovery service documentation, the hub documentation, and a link to some example queries that you can do with data exploration, Athena, and QuickSight. Some of those are what Carmen showed today, and also similar to the analysis that Hanover did. And finally, wanted to thank you for your time on this webinar and to learn more about the Migration Hub. Feel free to reach out to me. My name, again, is Michael Shisheni, to Carmen or Diego. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have, both now during the webinar and after, if you have more as you try the Migration Hub and Application Discovery Service and you start your migrations. Thank you for your time.